Good afternoon, friends. Today we will have a session which will be a lecture presentation on model making in architecture. So, you can look up the screen. It is about architectural models and their construction. So, this is an elective subject for the 6th semester students. I hope they will benefit from today's presentation. Architectural models, in this presentation we will be exploring what are architectural models, who requires them, what are the types of architectural models, what are the scales used, the materials used for architectural models, and we will also see how to construct an architectural model. And towards the last part of the presentation, we will be concentrating and showing some visuals on the professional architecture models made by architectural firms all across the globe. So, let us start today's presentation, which is on architectural model making. For the introduction, I will read out from the slide, you can all read along with me. We all know that architecture is a profession of turning dreams to reality. And before I elaborate on that, I like to comment that when you want to turn your dream into reality, what is important? You want to have a scale, you want to have a model of what the reality would is likely going to be. So, just as when you go to buy some clothes, you always want to have a trial. Every person wants to have a try of whether the clothes are going to fit me, whether I will look good in them. Similarly, in the case of architectural models, they present a view to the clients, to the people who are going to build their houses, dream houses, that how the final house is going to look like. So, you can look on the slide. Even while selecting something as small as a garment, we go through multiple trials, and it is only natural then for a matter where an individual's entire life savings are concerned. By this I mean to say, when the individual is going to build his own house, it entails an entire life saving. He would certainly want to have a preview of what is going to come about. And similarly, if it is a very big project, not a house, the lives of hundreds of people are involved, and therefore, a trial has to be devised. So, what we should understand by lives of hundreds of people? In this case, if we are going to design a hospital, or let us say a shopping mall, or let us say an airport building, it will be very important to have a feel of how the product is going to look like. So, in this case, an architectural model will provide a realistic view, I will say, on how the thing is going to shape up. So, I think I am making myself very clear that there is a huge amount of money involved when we talk of building a project. Maybe it is a small house where an individual's wealth is concerned, or when you talk of public buildings, huge amounts of money are involved. So, it is but natural and important to have a trial. So, this is exactly where an architectural model fits in. It gives us a preview, it gives us an orientation of what the final product is going to be likely. Okay. So, that is why it is mentioned here. An architectural model is the most tangible method of providing that trial experience to the clients. Move on. What is the definition of an architecture model? An architecture model is a scaled physical representation of a structure constructed to study aspects of an architectural design or communicate design ideas effectively. Okay, let's look at each of the words which have gone into this definition. The word scaled is important. We can't build a model which is as big as the building itself. So, it has to be a scaled down physical representation. And why do we do it? To study the aspects of the architectural design, means how are these aspects going to affect the residents or the clients or the people who are going to use that building, and equally so communicate design ideas. Here I mean to say that by building architecture models, the people who are perceiving the building, that is the students of architecture or the architects themselves, they will also enhance their effectivity of producing good designs. So, an architectural model not only helps the clients, it also helps in turn the architects and the students of architecture to design better, to put up better buildings. And the geometry of the model and the building it represents are often similar in the sense that one is a rescaling of the other. As I just pointed out, that the model has to be a scaled down physical representation of the structure. You can read on the top line, and the architecture model provides an accurate sense of space and dimension, so that the client can truly perceive the design before the building is built. So, on the left side of this slide we can see some examples of architecture models, and the way the top one is showing the interior of a building. So, this is a type of architecture model which we will be discussing later on down the line in this presentation, and this one is a model of the entire building complex. So, here you can notice the building is very complex, it has got ramps, it has got cutouts, it has got a tower. So, by drawing the plans of the building, it will be just almost impossible to visualize in 2 dimension what the building look like, but when you do a model of this sort, you get a clear view of the spatial feelings you could generate in by making such a model for a building which is to come up later. Okay, let us move on. Why do we need models? As I just pointed out when I began, the models are required for various stakeholders, and first of all to study the design. Quick models are made by architects to study the interaction of volumes or to get an idea of how they appear from different angles, which helps them to explore and improve ideas. So, I think it is very important for students of architecture too, that they involve themselves and learn the techniques of model making, so as to enhance their design skills and improve their designs. So, what is the need of a model? First of all, to study the design. Second, for explaining the design. A model is useful in explaining a complicated or an unusual design to a building team. When the architect is making the detailed drawings of the project, then it is important that some of the things may not be understandable by the people who are to execute the drawings, and in this case a model helps significantly to explain the design to the design team or to the building team even. Some of the structures are so complex that it is impossible to communicate your ideas in 2 dimensions. For example, a hyperbolic paraboloid roof, it will be much more easier to show to the building team how it is going to look like, what its form is going to be by making a scaled model. Okay. For selling the design, models are an efficient method for exhibiting and selling a design. Most people, including developers and would be house buyers, cannot visualize a design in 3 dimensions even after seeing the drawings. So, you will find that at all the property fairs, at all those places where you have to communicate your design ideas, it is always useful to have a model in place, and especially the developers and the promoters of building projects. Supposing you want to buy an apartment, you would certainly like to see, okay, you know your house is going to be of this size, let us say 1500 square feet or 2000 square feet, but how does the entire complex look like? So, a model of certain kind where all the blocks are available and you can visualize where my flat is going to be, that is the idea what the promoters want. So, it is very, very important to sell the design, and for that purpose an architecture model is very, very useful. And additionally, an architecture model is also used as showpiece. Models are used as showpieces or replicas in the reception of a prestigious building or as a part of a museum exhibition. Let us say you go to an airport, you have gone there for the first time, it is such a huge complex. Well, if you get a view of the entire airport area in the reception in the form of a model, that is going to clue you in as to what all segments, what all parts, what all wings of the airport are there, and you can orient yourself in a much better form, and in addition it is a showpiece. So, I will recapitulate. So, to study the design, for explaining the design, for selling the design, and also as showpieces. That is about what sums up the need for architecture models. Okay. Whom are models made for? Why would we make architecture models? The various stakeholders are the architects, the clients, the government, and some other stakeholders. We will take them one by one. Architects, amongst the users, the most common use of an architecture model is to help designers visualize a building project in 3D and to assist in developing its layout and spatial interrelationships. That's already been said quite a lot many times. So, you as students of architecture also, I must emphasize, you should always try to create models right from your conception stage of the design till you finalize your design. We will be starting down in the presentation the various types of models which can be made, but it is important that architects always and always make use of models to enhance their design skills. Okay. Next group of users are the clients. So, it is mentioned here, the potential investors and clients are powerfully impacted by a 3D model of a project. The model inspires understanding, enthusiasm and confidence. Models demonstrate that the results will be both workable and attractive. What does this mean? It means that when you go to buy your own flat and you are shown the model of the entire complex, you start realizing, you start feeling a little bit overawed, yeah, my house is there, huh? And you start thinking, yes, it is possible. Otherwise, if I show you a drawing, a 2D plan of that house, you are going to wonder how long it will take to design. So, once you have the entire story in the form of a model, how many floors the building is, what all is the expanse, how many tower blocks are there in that apartment complex where I am going to buy my flat, it really helps. You start believing things, what is the landscape is to the apartment kind of relationship, what are the roads, how wide, where do I park. So, each and everything can be very easily as well as in a manner which is understandable to the clients, can be shown in a model. Okay. So, architects being the users of course for their own design ideas, but it is very important and it is a powerful tool for the clients to have a look at the models of the buildings which they are going to inhabit or they are going to use. Okay. Sometimes architecture models are also necessary to obtain construction permits and project approvals. Let us say in the case of a metro city like Delhi, what happens is we have the Delhi Urban Arts Commission in place, which vets the project before, by the word vet I means approves the project before you can put up that building. So, they are going to see how your building is going to sit in context with the buildings across the site, along the site, on the sides of the site, what is the relationship with the road, the access. So, a model in such a case helps the government agencies as well as the also the construction agencies to have a fair view of how the building project is going to look like finally when it is up and about. So, it is important that models also serve the purpose of serving the government for getting approvals in big projects, I must specify. Okay. The third set or the fourth set probably, the model is often used as a site map for large complexes like I was mentioning earlier, like an airport or a convention center or an amusement park, to give all the people who, by the term stakeholders here we mean all those who are going to use that building. Maybe you are going there as a visitor to the airport, or maybe it is for the people who are working in the airport, the service people, the service personnel, or the different kinds of users. Everyone is interested to know, and it's a very good idea to use a model to show and make it a reference point for all the stakeholders who are going to use that buildings. Okay. Let us now come on to the types of models. As I was mentioning a little bit earlier, that we can do different types of models for our needs. When the need is just to explore the design at the concept stage, we have something called a conceptual model. Then as you refine your design ideas, you could be making, or an architect could be making, a block model to represent his buildings in 3D form. Now, block models would be just giving you a broad idea about the volumes. There will be no detailing, there will just be chunks of maybe whatever material we use. The most commonly materials used will come down in the presentation, we will have a look at that, but thermocol is one of them. It could be pieces of block, just to study the form orientations, how one block sits with the other, we could do a block model. Then there could be a site model for bigger developments. Let us say a housing complex which is housing about, let us say, 2000 people, which has about 500 odd houses or townhouses, apartments, or a mixture with a golf course. So, there we would be wanting to do a site model. And then of course, there are presentation models which are used by the promoters to exhibit their ideas, and for the persons who want to show them the exterior as well as the interior. So, then we have the interior models within the presentation models and also the spatial models. Now, let us check these out one by one. First, we will talk of conceptual models. A conceptual model mediates between the theoretical ideas in an architect's mind, or here you could substitute in a architectural student's mind, and the concrete facts of architecture such as structure and functional requirements. So, it is just a concept. I want to have a building of the one shown on the left side of this visual. So, how would it look? Whether is it possible to construct such a thing in 3D? What kind of structure would be employed? So, here a conceptual model of this sort will give you a fair idea if you construct this with the materials and the technique. Of course, we are going to discuss that later in the presentation. How to design a model, how to do a model also will be thrashed out. So, the underlying idea of a design or a creative concept is depicted in an entirely tangible manner. So, primarily I think you would be correlating that conceptual models would be in the domain for the architects themselves or the students of architecture themselves, not for the clients. It is just to hone your skills of how to design better, right. So, we move on to the next category, which is block models. As I was saying, just representations of the form, means like how the voids, how the positive and negative spaces, how the blocking is going to come out. So, block models provide a simplified communication of a design's various potential, various components rather than detailed information. So, there is less of detail, but more of massing, more of like trying to understand the relationship between one block and the other, whether I want to link it with a corridor or a veranda, or when I want to have a courtyard, that will come on later on in the finer aspects of the model. So, this enables the designer to investigate the formal qualities of the design, such as proportion, shape, mass. So, we are just hitting around like having the volumetric analysis. So, block models, it is mentioned in the third sentence. Block models are often used to examine considerations such as proximity to other buildings, circulation, street picture. So, I hope you will also realize that this category of models is also going to be of much use to the architectural students and the architects themselves, and not for the clients. Okay. Let us explore the other categories. We talked of something like a site model. A site model shows the design's relationship with the topography of the land. Supposing you got a site which is hilly in nature, the terrain is uneven, there are valleys and there are hills. So, what do? Your design exercise becomes very complicated, and a site model very easily helps you out to understand what that gradient is, how much is the slope, where do I bring my road or the transport to that building where I want to design on the hills, how does the road meander or curve up to lead to this. So, site model is very essential. You just can't do a design on a hilly terrain without a site model. So, and similarly in terms of the urban space, even if the site is not hilly, a site model shows the extent of the proposed design in the existing situation, like the picture on the right is showing. If these are the two blocks, the blue ones are the two new blocks proposed, how do they react to the surroundings, what is the scale. So, a site model is appropriate to show all the details which are adjacent to or congruent to the spaces which are to be designed. Okay. Buildings herein are reduced to building blocks just like a block model, and depending on its scale, the site model may include features such as recesses, projections, roof designs. So, that is what a site model is. The next category of course is the presentation models, which all of us are very familiar with. These are the models which we tend to see most of the times. So, presentation model seeks to provide a holistic view of the finished project along with the entire site extremities. These models usually put emphasis on best aspects of the design, such as facades or other elevational features, in order to impress the clients. So, just imagine like the picture on the left, you can see that is showing some sort of development, and of course, as you can notice, it is a hilly terrain. So, This kind of a model is a presentation model where we have the landscape elements of the trees and the steps and the building blocks and the entire site within which it is planned is easily comprehensible. The picture on the right side also is a presentation model of a tall story building, maybe it is a hotel or an apartment block or an office block, you can presume, but the finer details of the podium level, of the windows, of the roof form and how the building sits on the site. There is some blue color over here on the extreme right, maybe it is near a lake. So, everything can be explored when you do a presentation model, and it is one of the most realistic techniques which shows the actual building. Okay. And of course, I must emphasize presentation models are primarily meant to impress the clients or the ones who are going to pitch in money to construct the building, right, the promoters. Okay. Interior models, another category of models. These models, as the name suggests, would try to show the inside spaces of the buildings. So, models depicting interior space are important for both interior design, development and communication. Such models are solely produced to explore the internal characteristics of spaces, and these models typically incorporate detailed components such as staircases, furniture, door, window, etc. I think by looking at this slide, you can imagine that such all features cannot be represented in any other model. For example, the staircase, unless we do an interior model. So, you can see the picture on the right side, it has a staircase going up, and supposing you have your apartment in 2 levels or a duplex level house you are trying to buy. So, the interior detail would be very, very important, and interior model would only be the kind of model which could show you how the 2 floors are going to interact and look like in the final outcome. And of course, the picture on the left side is showing the interior layout or the interior of a office space, let us say. So, here how are the cabins, how are the workstations, what are the partitions, and such all features are easily representable in an interior model. So, it is important to have interior models where you want to show the, and it is also possible that some of the rooms might or some of the spaces might be having a different sort of roof, a curvilinear roof, or some of the spaces are higher than the ones next door. So, it is only through interior models you will be able to depict such changes in your design. Okay. And of course, the last type we mentioned was the spatial models. These are produced to investigate specific components of the design, and working in space allows exploration in 3D. Now, this is something which is of a higher order. When you are accomplished architects, you will be working in space. You will not be only doing a plan and then extruding it to make a model, but you will sometimes, the structures are very important. So, sometimes you will be thinking of some new sort of structures. So, there spatial model would be the best one. So, spatial models represent specific and subtle explorations that would be difficult to visualize within a building, within a normal building model. So, I think we are now very clear about the types of models which run down from conceptual to block to site, presentation, interior and spatial. Let us turn out to another aspect of model making, which is the scales used in model making. Notice at the bottom of the slide, we are going to talk about the scales used in models. The scales of course would vary upon the application. What kind of models we are wanting to have, that will be the determinant factor for the scale. Okay. The most for the first category, for the residential models, let us talk of scale used in residential models. The most widely used scale is 1:50 or 1/4 inch to a foot, because it is large enough to portray the detailed aspects without the entire mass becoming overwhelming and physically unmanageable. What does this mean? That 1:50 is a appropriate scale where you can show the details of the residential design which you are doing, and it is not too big or too unmanageable to produce, right. So, if the project of the residence has to include the site also, for example, you want to show the, it is a huge farmhouse, let us say, or it is a multi-family house, You want to show the garden, the terraces, the patios, the gazebos, entrance, landscaping. There, of course, if you use 1:50, that is not going to be appropriate. We will have to scale it down to 1:100. So please, students, try to get this. You all have gone through first year, second year. So as the scale goes on increasing from 1:50 to 1:100, the size of the model goes on decreasing. So I think I am making it clear that a scale of 1:100 is going to give you a smaller model as compared to 1:50. And for the residence, if you want to show more features besides the residence itself, you want to show the garden, terraces and other areas, the means like the areas which are impeding upon the main design itself, there you would use 1:100 or 1/8 inch to a foot. Normally nowadays we are using metric scale, but the conversion is given. So we will be using 1:100. Okay. We talked about the types of models, we talked about the interior models. So if you were to show something which is inside the building of the residence, there a scale of 1:25 would be more appropriate. So where specific detailing, texture, interiors, you want to show the kind of furniture layout as well as the design of the furniture, even for that matter, a scale of 1:25 would be important. Okay, you can see like in this slide we have it's mentioned that 1:100 is appropriate for site, 1:50 for normal views, and for interiors 1:25. So there is a slide over here which shows a picture of a residence, and it's a cut through sort of thing where the interior is also shown. The scale of the model in this case used is 1:50, and some of it is just like the representational part, right. Okay. For commercial models, by commercial we mean some office spaces, some large buildings like for shopping. So here the scale will be smaller because the volumes or the kind of buildings are going to be larger, and there the most commonly used scale would be 1:200. And in some cases, if the commercial development is not too expansive, there a scale of 1:100 may also be implied, but primarily we will be using a scale of 1:200 for the commercial developments. So you can see a model for a commercial development in the slide, and it's made on a scale of 1:200, where all the maybe the vehicles or the lamp posts, everything has to be scaled down, and a scale of 1:200 is most appropriate for commercial models, commercial development models. Okay. Landscapes, supposing you to do a big project like the design of a golf course, and maybe you to depict the entire landscape, there the popular scales would be 1:400 or even maybe 1:600. Let us see a visual. So this kind of a development where the expanse is pretty huge, the multiple buildings and gardens and some sort of recreational areas, this kind of model which we term it as a landscape model, or for landscape development, here the scales would be 1:400 at the least, and could go up to 1:600. Okay. The last category, of course, for the scales is the interior scales, and we have already mentioned for interiors you have to show the finer details of the design. There a scale of 1:25 would be appropriate, and let us see, this is a model on a scale of 1:25 depicting the interior, complete with even the, let us say, the planters, the kind of cabinets, the partitions, there is a flower vase over here. So this kind of thing, it's important. Even the flooring pattern and even the doors, the windows, they have to be depicted. In this case, for interiors, if you want to do a model for the interiors, the scale to be used would be 1:25. Okay, that brings us to another part of our presentation, which is the materials used for model making. Please try to notice at the bottom of the slide, the next topic we are covering is materials used for model making. You will be surprised that there is a broad range of materials which we can use to make models. You've seen so many photographs of models in the presentation till now, but if some of you wondering that how could we do those, they are so immaculate, they are so perfect, they are so crisp. So, what are the materials which go into making a model? The list is mentioned in the slide. If some of you are taking notes, can copy it down. Paper, cardboard and board, they have been classified into one division. So, all kinds of board, the most commonly word used in vernacular over